If you think Trump's ties to Epstein were just a photo or two, buckle up. This isn't one connection, it's a decades-long pattern with a lot of unsavory characters added to the mix, including many known pedophiles. Every year there's new names, new crimes, and Trump's right there in the middle of it. Starting in the late 80s, the network starts to form, and it begins with the lady Ghislaine. In 1989, Trump was photographed several times with Ghislaine's father, Robert Maxwell, aboard his yacht, which he called the Lady Ghislaine. This was years before Ghislaine and Epstein's trafficking ring became public. But it's around this time Ghislaine Maxwell connects Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. At this point, Maxwell is already moving in the elite modeling circles, acting as a connector between the men like John Casablanca and Jean-Luc Brunel. And of course, I'm not going to say that perfectly. Both notorious for exploiting underage girls. Casablanca's owner of Elite Model Management is close friends with Trump. And then Brunel is the founder of Karen Modeling Agency and will later run MC2, which is a modeling agency with Epstein's funding. All three men's worlds overlap through Maxwell, and you'll see it as the story goes on. Coming up, the modeling contest where Trump surrounded himself with accused predators. In 1991, Trump starts hosting the Look of the Year competition with John Casablanca, owner of Elite Model Management, who was also accused of sexual abuse and trafficking. So by this time, Casablanca had already raped a 15-year-old while married to his first wife, and then he raped a 17-year-old while he was married to his second wife, which was the 15-year-old. Truly a man of consistency, just not the kind anyone should aspire to, nor would want to be friends with. Well, at least you'd think. The Elite Agency was infamous for sexual exploitation of underage models. So does this sound like the kind of friends you want to be hanging out with? Well, evidently, the president thinks they're cool. And the judges of these contests included people like David Copperfield, Gerald Marie, and Patrick Demarchelier. All are accused pedophiles and sexual abusers. Many have Epstein ties. So now let's talk about the Calendar Girl competition. In 1992, businessman George Hourani says he organized a Calendar Girl competition at Mar-a-Lago with 28 contestants, and the only men present were Trump and Epstein. Hourani's then wife, Jill Harth, would later sue Trump for sexual assault in 1997. So the pattern continues. So this takes us to the infamous November 1992 Mar-a-Lago party. In November 1992, and I'm sure you've all seen the viral NBC footage, which shows Trump and Epstein laughing and chatting while Ghislaine Maxwell appears clearly in the background. This scene represents a glimpse into a social circle where power, money, and predatory behavior all overlap, and where both men clearly felt at home. It speaks to how much it undermines the "hey, I barely knew him" defense we keep hearing from Donald Trump. This wasn't a one-night stand for Trump and Epstein. Excuse the pun, but it was part of a much longer, much closer connection. So the next turn in the story, well, the lifestyles of the rich and famous. In 1994, when Trump was asked what traits Tiffany Trump, his daughter that no one ever seems to see, inherited, Trump said, well, she's got marvelous legs. We don't know whether or not she's got, and then he motions this part yet, indicating her breasts. Tiffany was a baby at the time, so maybe this is considered funny in some households. I don't know, but let's keep going. In 1996, the Russia trip with Leon Black. In 1996, Trump travels to Russia with Leon Black, the former Apollo CEO and one of Epstein's closest friends. Years later, even after Epstein had been exposed as a sex trafficker, Black would still loan him $150 million for supposed tax and estate planning services. Well, this amount is far above rates, and Epstein wasn't a certified professional, so what do you think the money was for? And why was Trump flying to Russia with him? So Black, Trump, Epstein, Putin, all pieces of the same puzzle. So now it's time to talk about the Maria Farmer allegations. In 1996, survivor Maria Farmer names Trump as a likely co-conspirator during her time in Epstein's orbit and claims Ivana Trump, Trump's ex-wife, assisted Ghislaine Maxwell with recruitment. Here's a quick aside. Ivana has now passed away. Did you know Trump buried her on his golf course to score a tax write-off? Was that a smart tax move or just completely creepy? And by the way, where he buried her It's now covered in weeds. No one takes care of that part of the property. Anyway, back to the story. In late 1990s, Maxwell starts introducing Trump to foreign-born models at parties thrown by New York agencies, including the Kit Kat Club circuit, where Trump meets Melania. At the same time, Epstein invests in Jean-Luc Brunel's MC2 model management. Remember Brunel? That's the guy I mentioned earlier, notorious for drugging and raping underage girls. So he uses MC2 to funnel minors to Epstein, including 3 12-year-olds from France for Epstein's birthday. And according to court filings, the agency recruited young models from overseas under the guise of work opportunities, often without proper visas. And don't you think that's kind of ironic considering Trump's current hardline stance on immigration? So now Trump wants in on the action his buddies are enjoying. So in February of 1999, he launched Trump Model Management. The agency would later be accused of trafficking models from Eastern Europe without visas, charging high rents and paying little income. And some of those same models, well, they turned up in Epstein's circle. So you can ignore all of this if you want, but the ties are right in front of you for anyone who's willing to look. And this is the time when Virginia Roberts Giuffre was recruited. In 1999, Virginia was recruited at Mar-a-Lago by Ghislaine Maxwell while working at the spa. And remember, this is the girl Trump was furious that Epstein stole from him. With everything I've already shown you Trump already knew about Epstein and the predators in his circle, shouldn't his outrage have been more about protecting her than not losing her? And to continue with more shenanigans, Epstein and Brunel, the 2 serial predators, hanging out together at Trump Tower. In 1999, there were rumors that Epstein and Maxwell's co-conspirator, Jean-Luc Brunel, lived in Trump Tower, but just left after complaints of all-night carousing. And Trump's circle of questionable friends doesn't stop there. That same year, he told the New York Times, "I'm very popular with the black populace. When Puff Daddy has a party, when Russell Simmons has a party, I'm the person they call." Well, both of these men would later face accusations of sexual assault, trafficking, and blackmail operations. Different names, same kind of company. And now, in this stage, Epstein-Trump friendship is no longer behind the curtain, it's center stage. In February of 2000, Trump, Melania, Epstein, and Maxwell are all cozy at a Mar-a-Lago party. Prince Andrew attended it too. In 2002, Trump bragged to the New York magazine, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. He likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side." We've all heard that quote. And around this time, Maxwell organizes a birthday book for Epstein. It includes a note signed Donald in a booklet with dozens of messages, including a crude nude drawing and that creepy closing line, "Happy birthday and may every day be another wonderful secret." If you're tracking a pattern of cozy intimacy and coded messaging, this might just be it. He even went as far as to immortalize Epstein in print. 2003, in How to Get Rich, Trump's book, he brags about a Jeffrey you know by first name alone, putting him on the same category as Elvis. And also in 2003, on the Howard Stern show, Trump said, "You know, who's one of the greatest beauties of the world? And I helped create her? Ivanka. She's 6 feet tall. She's got the best body." And then in 2004, he went back on Stern's show. This time, Howard asked if Trump minded if he called Ivanka a piece of arse. He used another word. Trump gave him permission, and he never stopped Stern from running those episodes on repeat. Think about that. That's his daughter. But the Epstein files, untouchable. Why is that? And yet he goes for another turn at the Howard Stern mic in 2005. Trump continued to brag on Stern's show. This time it was about barging into dressing rooms while contestants were undressed. He even jokes it might even be his obligation to sleep with them. Sorry, but not funny. So let's rewind for a moment and put the spotlight back on Epstein before his next Stern moment. In 2005, the Palm Beach police launched a 13-month undercover investigation into Epstein. Multiple witnesses from victims to neighbors report young girls entering his estate at odd hours, some as young as 14, with allegations that Brunel's agency supplied them. 2006, Epstein is arrested and indicted on state felony charges for procuring minors for prostitution and solicitation. This was a key turning point in the unfolding of the entire scandal. The walls were starting to close in on Epstein. But that same year, on The View, Trump said, "I've said if Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her." Again, gross. He added she has a very nice figure. And yet again on Howard Stern, Trump described Ivanka as always been very voluptuous, comparing her physical appeal favorably in a really creepy way. In 2007, Epstein faces federal indictments but walks away with a sweetheart plea deal from U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta. Trump later rewards Acosta with a cabinet position as labor secretary. This isn't just coincidence. It's all about connections. On October 2007, Mar-a-Lago confirms Epstein was banned for trying to procure girls from their spa. One victim was 18, but the others were all underage. But here's the thing, a ban from the club doesn't mean a ban from power. 2007-2008, Alan Dershowitz on Epstein's defense team engineers that sweetheart non-protection deal that kept Epstein out of serious prison time. Then Dershowitz himself is accused by Virginia Giuffre of rape, claims he ended up retracts after a settlement. So if he, Dershowitz, were truly innocent, why would he settle at all? And here's the kicker. Years later, Trump is on camera calling Dershowitz a brilliant lawyer and a very smart guy. That's the same man who helped shield Epstein. The circle doesn't just close, it's airtight. And to continue with Epstein, on June 2008, he pleads guilty to 2 felony prostitution charges. Was his sentence? Just 18 months. And he served even less. Does that sound like justice for the girls? In 2010, Epstein was asked under oath if he'd ever socialized with Trump in the presence of females under 18, and Epstein pleads the fifth. That's not a denial, that's a shield. And in March 2011, Virginia Roberts Giuffre goes public. Donald Trump was also a good friend of Jeffrey's. He didn't partake in sex with any of us, but he flirted with me. He'd laugh and he'd tell Jeffrey, boy, you've got the life. And that's not the only red flag from the 2000s. Trump is accused of bringing underage girls to casinos with Epstein. One that got the media's attention, as she was a top 3 ranked tennis player at the time. And another close ally, Vince McMahon, accused of sex trafficking and covering up child sex abuse in the WWE. And his wife, Linda McMahon, isn't just in the room, she's in Trump's cabinet, running the Department of Education straight into the ground. One is accused of trafficking, the other is dismantling children's education. This is the power couple Trump keeps in his orbit. So now let's talk about an accusation that's unfounded and publicly undocumented. And here's my stance. If it's real, unseal the files and deliver justice no matter the party. What am I talking about? In 2015 CPAC, Trump calls Epstein's island a cesspool and hints that Clinton has a lot of problems coming up over it. So that's a lot of big talk. So what's he waiting for? Release the records and stop blacking out his own name at the same time. He's done it reportedly over 1,000 times in those same files. In 2016, there are multiple lawsuits that accuse Trump and Epstein of raping a 13-year-old girl. One case disappears after the accuser gets death threats. And that's the thing. With Trump, the pattern isn't that the heat dies down, it's that it escalates. In 2017, Donald Trump was sworn in for the first time. And around that same time, Epstein says he still speaks to Trump even while Trump is president. In 2018, Trump reportedly suggests to friends that Ivanka should get breast implants to help her with her modeling career. His sister Marianne stepped in to shut that down. In 2019, Epstein's arrested in New York. Trump claims he hasn't spoken to him in 15 years. But with these two, who lie as easily as they breathe, good luck figuring out which story is the truth. In 2020, Trump gives Casablanca a job in Brazil after his abuse scandals. So convenient getaway plan? Maybe. It's a pattern with Trump. He knows the accusations, but if you're a friend, he'll still do you a solid. In 2020, Alan Dershowitz, yes, that same guy, the one that's been accused of being a sexual predator, he joins Trump's impeachment defense team. Now, why is that interesting? Besides the obvious that I already mentioned, well, because he's the same Harvard law icon who in the late 90s argued a president could be impeached for abuse of power. Now, standing before the Senate, he flips the script, saying that even if Trump did everything alleged in the Ukraine scandal, it would be an unimpeachable offense. It's a complete reversal from his Clinton-era stance. And the irony of all this, it lands while Dershowitz is still under the shadow of Epstein-related allegations, which he vehemently denies. But the optics. He was a lifelong Democrat to that point and civil liberties champion defending a Republican president he didn't even vote for. Both men trailed by Epstein baggage. Not a good look, but I'll let you decide. Next up in 2020, Jean-Luc Brunel was arrested in Paris for rape and trafficking. So you remember him? He's the one that I mentioned earlier who was owning Karen Models in Paris. Then he went on to finance Epstein's agency MC2. Virginia Giuffre claimed in court filings that Brunel farmed out underage models to Epstein, using his agencies as a recruitment for sex trafficking. Do you see how all this web is weaving together? And here, 2022, what's really interesting is Brunel was found dead in his prison cell. They say it was suicide, but curiously, it was suicide by hanging himself. And strangely, that's how Epstein died. And now for more refusals, deaths, and denials. In April 2025, Virginia Giuffre dies just weeks after a suspicious bus accident. This is something to ponder. A few days later, what seemed to be a minor bus accident, she posted on social media that she'd suffered bruises and renal failure. And she was saying that the doctors gave her 4 to 5 days to live. And then her family confirmed that she was hospitalized and later transferred to a specialty unit. But then she recovered, and then a few weeks later, they say she died by suicide? Really? Here's what stands out. She was living in Australia at the time. Australian police almost always release at least a general description of the circumstances in a suicide, but in her case, nothing. No details, nothing for the public to see. She wasn't just any victim. She was the public face of allegations against Prince Andrew and a key witness in one of the most powerful sex trafficking cases in modern history, Jeffrey Epstein. Now, stack that against the timing of the bus crash and the sudden end of her life. This isn't tinfoil hat territory. It's a reminder that when you take on power at this level, mysterious things have a way of happening. And now a billionaire private equity investor takes center stage. In 2025, Trump appoints Ben Black, who's the son of billionaire Leon Black, as CEO of the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, DFC for short. Leon Black isn't just a Wall Street name. He's the guy who joined Trump on that 1996 Moscow trip we talked about earlier, and one of Epstein's closest friends. He was forced out of Apollo Global Management in 2021 after it came out that he paid Epstein $158 million in 2012 and 2017 for tax and estate advice. Epstein had no credentials to justify that kind of payout. It's a flashing neon red siren. And that didn't stop there. In 2023, Leon Black paid another $62.5 million to settle Epstein-related claims. And now his son runs the DFC, a federal agency created in 2019 to replace parts of USAID. Under Trump, USAID's food aid programs were gutted recently, leaving children starving. The DFC shifts that taxpayer money toward a privately led infrastructure and minerals projects, moves that double as geopolitical chess plays. And so the optics on this? Trump hands a powerful government post to the son of a man who funnels millions to Epstein and who has shared the same rooms, the same deals, and the same flights with Trump for decades. And don't forget the Russian component of this. So this circle isn't just closed, it's reinforced. And now, out of the blue, Sean Diddy Combs enters the chat. May 2025, Trump says he'll look at the facts on pardoning Sean Diddy Combs. We know what that means. It's Trump speak for, I'm going to pardon him, but only once I can see what he can do for me. It's that eternal quid pro quo. And if you thought that was the most ridiculous pardon, let's spin back to present day, August 2025. Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's personal lawyer and the #2 official at the Department of Justice, did something unheard of in American history. In July 2025, he personally visited to depose Ghislaine Maxwell, who we all know by now is a convicted child sex trafficker. That alone is a massive ethical breach. But it gets worse. Blanche is now preparing to publicly release the audio and video from that 9-hour deposition, not to expose the truth, but because Maxwell apparently plays ball and tries to exonerate Trump. Let that sink in. A sitting DOJ official, also Trump's own criminal defense attorney, secretly records a convicted child predator and then releases only the parts that help Trump? Is that justice? Or is this a cover-up in plain sight? So before we wrap, here are some more receipts. And now to the summer of 2025, Trump recently calls the Epstein files fake and refuses to release them. But here's the thing. If they're fake, releasing them should prove him right. So why keep them sealed? To protect the survivors? Well, they all want it released. So here's a few scenarios that could be why he's doing this. They've got dirt on Trump's enemies in there and something on him. Or the evidence does exist, but not the way he's been hyping it, which would make him look like a liar, and he doesn't want that. Or the names he swears are in there are not in there at all, and that would blow up his credibility. Or, and this is the one I believe is most likely, the cover-up. The names are there, and they need to stay there so he can keep striking quid pro quo arrangements that are too ugly to survive daylight. Keeping these sealed, the mystery keeps alive for his base. But the day that it does come out, because it will come out, the truth has to match the hype. And that's the real risk. I break down every scenario in a very short video linked below here. Watch it so you know exactly why he might be keeping those files buried. If the deep state is about powerful people shielding each other from accountability, then it's not about party lines. It's about power lines. And that means anyone can be a part of it. And that's okay. We want to know. For decades, we've seen the same pattern: powerful men, sexual abuse, and Trump, he's been right in the middle. If you think this is coincidence, you're not paying attention. If it were anyone else, would you dismiss all of this coincidence? Don't you agree we deserve real answers? The survivors deserve real answers. Please like this video so more people see it. Share it before it disappears, and stay tuned because the pattern isn't over. Ciao for now.